I'm a therapist. I'm also a person living with lived experience with mental health condition. When I was about 13, I went through a time where my thinking got really cloudy and I withdrew from most of the people around me. And I was taken to a hospital by my mom. I didn't know why I was there. I thought people thought I was crazy. I was really scared. It was very restrictive. And at that time, they told me that I was experiencing something called psychosis. And they said that meant that I was disconnected from reality. I didn't know exactly what that meant, but ultimately, it ended up being a long journey of different mental health challenges and treatments and self discovery. And I faced some dark days. I thought that things were kind of like going to be over for me. I had these aspirations of maybe going to college and doing all this stuff, and then after the hospital and going back to the hospital and back to the hospital, I thought, well, maybe that's not in the cards for me. And I felt very low. Um, but in time, I met other people living with conditions like this and found out that many do still chase their dreams. And so when I was still 13, I got sent to a therapeutic school, and that ended up being a really good thing for me because I met other people living with mental health challenges, and I was able really to work on myself and work through the depression. I realized that there's life outside of this because for a while it was just hospital, 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 IOP, hospital. Like I was just constantly in treatment. It felt like that was my life, and it was really odd to go from being a normal teenager to having like this whole barrage of all this stuff. It's like my world just stopped. But then going to the school and the end of the hospitalizations, I started doing things like art. I started doing things like talking to folk again because I'd become really withdrawn with my illness, and then also just with everything going on, I didn't really see a reason to talk to many folk. I was missing a lot of school. I didn't see a real reason to go to school because I didn't think I had much in the cards for me as far as good things. And so I started to have some hope. And, when I finished school, I wanted to go back and help others. So I went to college, studied psychology, criminal justice, went to grad school, studied social work, and took all the paths I could to become a therapist. And that's been extremely meaningful to me. I wrote a workbook for other people living with mental health conditions, seeking mental health recovery, and I made it particular for folks living with psychosis because I remember how lonely it felt to have that diagnosis in particular because, people talk about depression, people talk about anxiety, but psychosis, it sounded like psycho, it sounded like crazy, and I didn't find a lot of resources for teens or other people my age who are going through that. And it felt like maybe they think we're so off the wall that we can't read, so I wanted there to be at least one resource for, young adults seeking recovery from psychosis, just to tell them like, hey, like there's life after this. A lot of people do go through this and recover. And so support was really important to me. There was a time, first getting out of the hospital when a lot of people who were close to me kind of ditched. They were freaked out by it. They just sort of split ways, and that was really difficult. But I did find people who did stay by me. Having mental health providers who've been encouraging, it's been really important. So my first psychiatrist we didn't gel so well, but the psychiatrist I have now as an adult is a really huge support for me, somebody I really trust. And I think that's really important to have a provider that you can trust, like psychiatrist, therapist, both ideally. My partner, as an adult, is a really big support for me. When I was going through it as well, there were times when I would seek out support and I wasn't really sure what I was seeking out support for. So I remember there was a time when I was having these really loud voice-like experiences, and they were saying really, really nasty things to me. And they were almost demonic-like. And so at that time, I thought that it was possible that I was getting harassed by demons, and that really scared me. And so at that time, and this was like my first year or two in college, and it was a time when I didn't have access to my medication. But I sought out the support of a priest, and I thought I was seeking out the support of a priest for demons. But he still talked to me. He talked to me every week for a while. And he eventually let me know, hey, Jen, like, I don't think that you're dealing with demons. I think you're living with a mental health condition. And at first I was kind of resistant to it, but I really appreciate that he took the time to get to know me. He didn't just like cast me off, and he didn't really play into it either. He didn't like argue with me about it. He just spent time with me, took it seriously, listened. And I think that was probably one of the kindest things somebody could have done for me at that time. Throughout the course of my illness, both when I was in the active illness and even today, I've had times when I've had to share my experiences, or I've wanted to share my experiences. And so it's been a journey of figuring out, what works for me. I'm pretty open with certain people who are close to me and more guarded with other folk. I'll test the waters, see how folk are going to respond. But overall, people have usually responded surprisingly positive. Sometimes folks will say something ignorant, sometimes folks won't understand. I let them know, and that's okay. Like, people can be ignorant about all kind of things, and this is no different, but it doesn't mean that what they say dictates who you are. So if somebody doesn't get it, or they treat you differently than how they treated you before your diagnosis, that doesn't say anything about you. That says something about where they are with accepting what's going on for you. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. My advice would be to seek out a psychiatrist or other mental health providers that you can trust. If you don't trust the first person, that's okay. There's usually other folk you can talk to. Be honest. It's really difficult to be honest because sometimes we get scared of, hey, if I'm honest, I'm going to go to the hospital. Or if I'm honest, I'm going to get on a medication I don't want. But what I've found is if I can be honest, that I get most out of my interactions with my providers. If you're having side effects you don't like with medication, don't stop taking it. But talk with your doctor. Don't ignore it either. I think that's really important. A lot of times there's things they can do they might not advertise you right off the bat. If you're gaining weight or if you're feeling foggy or something like that. The biggest thing I think is just to remember that, everything that you wanted to do before this, you can still do. This doesn't have to be the end of everything. You can find ways to do things. And you might find after an experience like this, there's new things that you want to do. So before I went through my mental health challenges, I didn't have being a therapist on my roster. I actually wanted to become a music teacher. That was my childhood dream. But after I went through this, I wanted to help other people. I developed some compassion. I think that's really common of, somebody going through something like this. Maybe they want to help others. Maybe they want to try something where they can express what they've been through writing or speech or creating art. And that's really cool too.